Zaibatsu was but a new set of clothes. There were clothes worn long before. The masks changed continuously, but the body lurking behind them had remained there since 800 years ago. Lineage chooses the people. Form builds the method. Host offers the body. Now it is time to witness how the oldest version of that savage form was assembled. Sure. Today, this character is commonly translated only as scholar. Yet it never meant the brush alone from the beginning. In ancient China, Shi was the warrior noble wielding bow and sword, as well as the elite badge of those who read and ruled. Shi Nong Gong Shang. Scholar, peasant, artisan, merchant. This was never a realistic snapshot of society. It was a political document of dominion defining who rules and looks down upon whom. An instrument of systemic justification. Hierarchy is always written first, codified in text. In China and on the Korean peninsula, Shi stayed with the brush, not the blade. Through civil examinations, documents, rituals, and bureaucracy, rather than wielding the blade directly with their own hands, they sought to manage and delegate violence through paper and institutions. This was the form of civil governance. Conversely, Japan's warrior class went by many names. There was musha, armored fighters on the field, and samurai, from the root saburao, to serve at one side, a word that came to mean the armed retainer class. But names are not neutral. They needed language that could legitimize them as rulers. So the term bushi took hold. The moment martial force fused with Shi, the badge of elite status, violence was no longer framed as the raw brutality of outlaws. It became privilege, a licensed right, protected by rank and enforced by the caste order. When the peace of the Edo Bakufu arrived, these warriors transformed into bureaucrats. They studied Confucianism and spoke of moral governance, decorating their dominion with sanctimonious language. Yet the core, the licensed monopoly on violence, remained deep within the system. In modernity, their brutal survival mechanisms were codified into an idealized moral code called Bushido. They equated this with Western chivalry and exported it to the world. A licensed savagery that subjugated the weak was repackaged as an aesthetic code to titillate Western elitism. Japan was not governed by the rule of law. Those who carried swords were the law. Early warrior rules were never written to protect the weak. They existed to manage land, loyalty, and disputes within the warrior class. Commoners were not citizens. They were a host to be ruled and extracted. Ronbudori, burning villages and seizing goods. Haitadori, kidnapping women and children. War was rewarded not with wages, but with plunder. Captured commoner women were violated in the camps, or sold as slaves. Violence was not treated as crime. It was the official system of compensation. For the powerless, law offered almost no protection. Disputes were settled more often by the sword than by courts. Private vengeance and self-help became accepted practice. Violence itself was the right. Kirisutogomen, the license to kill and walk away. The privilege to cut down a lower caste person, on the mere claim of rudeness, and walk away unpunished. When the Edo period began, open chaos declined. But the license to violence remained. Sujijiri was also common. Testing a blade by killing innocent passers-by on night roads. The dead could not speak. The killer's word became the only truth. Peace did not mean equality. It meant stability for those already in power. By the 18th century, procedures looked more formal. After 1742, a witness was required. Yet another samurai or retainer was enough. Walk together and testify for each other. That was all it took. The law did not abolish violence. It merely organized it more efficiently. The teeth of the license were never pulled. This privilege of the blade extended to the bodies of lower caste women. Rape was legally forbidden. Yet the prohibition carried weight, mainly within the same class. When a bushi violated a commoner woman, punishment was extremely light or non-existent. For a commoner to accuse a samurai was nearly impossible. The spirit of Haidodori, that treated women as spoils in Sengoku, continued in Edo, wearing only the thin mask of rudeness. Later generations remembered this as the romantic code of Bushido, loyalty and honor. But unlike China's spirit of Shiari, which protected the weak, or Western chivalry, which shielded the defenseless. For centuries it was a form that, through Rambudori and Hidadori, Tsujijiri and Kirisodagomen, monopolized violence, legitimized domination, and controlled the powerless. Behind the beauty of cherry blossoms lay the blood-soaked license. Lineage chooses the people. Form builds the method. Host offers the body. Amid the bloodbath of the Battle of Dan no Yura in 1185, the Haika clan was decimated. And in 1192, Minamoto no Yoritamo established the Kamakura Bakufu. The emperor, stripped of political power, was confined to Kyoto as a ritual figurehead, marking the first time the warrior lineage directly governed the host of Japanese society. The collapse of the Muromachi shogunate and the savage civil wars of the Sengoku period. Within this madness, violence was the sole engine of survival and class mobility. Those who severed the most heads and seized the most lands became daimyo. In this era, violence was the singular form for acquiring sovereignty itself. The establishment of the Tokugawa shogunate in Edo in 1603. The 250 years of peace they boasted of was merely a monopoly of violence by the warrior class. Bushi, comprising less than 7% of the population, monopolized weapons, politics, and taxes, while the remaining 93% knelt under the terror of the blade. Sankenkotai, officially institutionalized by Tokugawa Iemitsu in 1635. Provincial daimyo were summoned periodically to Edo, their wives and heirs held hostage, forcing them to deplete their fortunes. A highly sophisticated form designed to extract absolute submission without direct armed conflict. A clandestine collusion between merchant capital, which possessed wealth but no power, and the Bushi class, which held status and steel but drowned in debt. They mutated together within the Edo marketplace, preying on each other's survival. This ugly symbiosis became the primal seed of the military-industrial Zaibatsu form. The name of the shogunate changed from Kamakura to Edo. Yet, the single unchanging principle remained. The warrior lineage, monopolizing the licensed right of violence, owns and dominates the entire host. Within this system, savagery was not an aberration. It was the engine's fuel. In 1853, U.S. Commodore Perry's black ships anchored off Edo, crushing Japan's isolation. As the shogunate faltered, lower-ranking Bushi from Satsuma and Choshu seized the power vacuum. They dragged the emperor out of obscurity, using him as a puppet to complete their coup. The Meiji Restoration of 1868. The lower-ranking Bushi, now the new masterminds of the state, pretended to abolish their own ancient privileges. Through the 1876 Sword Abolition Edict, they stripped swords and converted warrior stipends into state bonds. Yet this was not the demise of the Bushi. It was their transition into a modern state form to perfect their control. The architects of the Meiji Empire were none other than the warrior lineage of Satsuma and Choshu. Draped in Western uniforms, they engineered the parliament, bureaucracy, and police to lock their grip on the host. They deified the emperor as a living god, transforming the nation into a totalitarian garrison state. The sword was replaced by the rifle, the Bushi's crest, by the state uniform. Meiji bureaucrats privatized state assets at absurdly low prices to select merchant clans. Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, and Yasuda, showering them with exclusive monopolies. The warrior lineage colluded with privileged capital to spawn colossal monopolies. It was a moment the feudal daimyo's fiefdom was resurrected as the corporate Zaibatsu form. They wore European uniforms, convened parliaments, and recited constitutions. Yet, the heart of the order they ruled remained that of the 800-year shogunate. The instinct that tolerated no dissent, the governing technique that reduced humans to mere tools. The clothes were imported from Europe, but the body within them remained the sword-wielding Bushi. Western-style modernization was never a moral washing machine to cleanse savagery. Instead, it merely placed modern weapons of mass destruction and scientific administration into the hands of the savage. It gifted them the joint stock corporation, the highly sophisticated corporate form of absolute control. The historical truths of the mass atrocities across the Chinese mainland and Unit 731 covered in Act 5 are brutally severe, far beyond human imagination. To share this structural truth with a wider audience, this video refrains from displaying actual archive photographs. Even AI image generators struggle to capture the sheer weight of this savagery. We strongly encourage viewers to independently search and examine the raw historical photo records available online. The winter of 1937, Nanjing. The moment the modern Western uniforms engineered by Meiji were ripped away, the raw slaughter instincts of the 800-year shogunate exploded. According to the Tokyo Trials, IMTFE, records, at least over 200,000 lives were systematically annihilated, and 10,000s of women were brutally violated in the first 6 weeks. Soldiers who treated an entire foreign metropolis as targets for unrestricted tsujijiri. They treated living human beings as mere material to test the sharpness of their blades. Beheading, arson, and proudly documenting this gruesome hunt in photographs. This was the dehumanizing formula of Edo, amplified by modern weapons across the continent. Nanjing was one city. The Sanko Sakusen, the Three Alls policy, turned entire regions into hunting grounds for Kirisudagomen. Kill all, burn all, loot all. According to studies including Mitsuyoshi Hamida's, more than 2.7 million civilians became fuel for this policy. The moment the Bakufu's monopoly on violence expanded and was systematized across the continental host. Unit 731, Pingfong, Harbin. A human slaughterhouse hidden behind the fictional administrative title of the Epidemic Prevention Department. Their experimental subjects were stripped of names and nationalities, reduced to maruta, logs. They were frozen at -40 degrees Celsius, injected with plague bacilli, and dissected alive. Though wrapped in the rational language of science and vaccine development, it was the scientific weaponization of the savage form that treated humans as consumables for 800 years. The sadistic curiosity of the Edo Bushi, observing the victim's death throes at the execution block, was resurrected here, wearing white lab coats and holding syringes, measuring agony in metrics. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East convened in 1946. A few militarist commanders ascended the gallows, but the emperor, the command tower of savagery, was never indicted. And not a single medical war criminal of Unit 731, led by Ishii Ishiro, ever stood trial in the courtrooms of Tokyo. Post-war, the United States pardoned their atrocities in exchange for exclusive access to the biological warfare and human experimentation data extracted from victims. The United States, acting as the new geopolitical host, chose to manage and condone savagery for its own hegemony. Justice was bartered for data, and the war criminals returned as titans of academia, politics, and pharma. The blood-stained katana of Nanjing, the scorched earth of the Three Alls, and the corroded scalpel of Unit 731 were of the same flesh. This methodology of savagery, the form, unpunished and absolved, does not vanish. It dissolved into the sticky web of post-war capital, flowing through the imperial military and family lineage. The wiring that survived incomplete under the reverse course, crossed the sea and anchored itself in the new ruling structure of the Korean host. The warrior's sword was broken, but the form survived. Through the Cold War's reverse course, the unpunished Zaibatsu re-engineer themselves into Keiretsu, an invisible web of absolute capital. Their savage operating system did not vanish with peace. Let us examine how this ancient monopoly of violence manifested as corporate savagery in the post-war era. Under the banner of the economic miracle, the savage form initiated a modern style of Kirisudagomen. Mitsui's mines poisoned rivers with cadmium, creating the horrific Itai disease while the lineage prospered. From Mitsubishi's denial of wartime forced labor to the Lockheed scandal, the message was absolute. The Iron Triangle utilized Yakuza syndicates as invisible muscle to exploit, corrupt, and guarantee corporate immunity. Growth was the moral language that laundered this monopoly of power. And soon, this exact form, employing organized crime to protect the lineage, would be seamlessly cloned within the Korean host. This predatory methodology crossed the sea to the post-colonial Korean host. To perfect their control, the transplanted form weaponized the local Confucian culture and deep-rooted clan networks. That lineage's capital and method rode colonial remnants, vested property, and the 1965 claims funds to be grafted onto the Korean host as the monstrous chaebol form. At the forefront stood Samsung, whose 1966 saccharine smuggling incident signaled the early return of this law-evading form. The rebirth of a methodology designed to deceive the national host and extract wealth. The 2007 Samsung slush fund scandal, exposed by attorney Kim Yong-chul, revealed a web of hidden accounts and systematic bribery of prosecutors and government officials to construct a privatized rule of law, a shadow jurisdiction where the law bent to the lineages will before it ever reached a courtroom. In 2016, the corporate mask fully cracked. To secure Lee Jae-yong's succession, Samsung funneled billions in bribes to the shadow power behind the president, disguising it as elite equestrian sponsorship. Before the National Assembly, Lee stared into the cameras and denied everything. But the Supreme Court did not believe him. In 2021, he was convicted and taken into custody right inside the courtroom. This was not a rogue executive's error. It was a structural reincarnation. The bribes for succession did not stand alone. To force the merger of Samsung C&T and Chile Industries, the transaction that secured Lee Jae-yong's control, Samsung Biologics was later found to have committed accounting fraud, inflating the very numbers that made the merger's math work. Bribery opened the door. Falsified books secured the room behind it. This was the exact form through which Meiji warrior bureaucrats once colluded with Zaibatsu to privatize the state. Reproduced, almost without alteration, in a Seoul courtroom 4 generations later. The sadistic profit-maximizing nature of Unit 731, which treated humans as disposable experimental materials, was reenacted in the cover-up of leukemia industrial disasters at the Gaheng semiconductor plant. While countless young workers, including Hwang Yu-mi, died of rare cancers, Samsung maintained the false narrative that the technology was harmless, a cold calculus using and discarding human bodies as consumables. The brutality went beyond denial. They deployed private security and hidden networks to stalk, wiretap, and physically assault the grieving families to silence the truth. The wiring that survived unpunished for generations perfected its ultimate form here. Their highly automated factory lines were no different from modern, sterile biological laboratories. The 2017 oil spill, caused by the reckless operation of a Samsung maritime crane, dyed the sea in catastrophic black. Yet, Samsung schemed to manipulate data and hide the truth to evade legal liability. Mirroring the Imperial Gyokusai Command, the Samsung Republic mobilized media and broadcast networks to lure volunteers, pushing millions, including elementary school children, into the toxic sludge with nothing but cheap dust masks and shared, thin hazmat suits, laundering a massive corporate crime as national patriotism. Decades later, this tragic exploitation was canonized into the UNESCO memory of the world, packaged as a voluntary miracle. Never a union until dust enters my eyes. Under this founder's dogma, a 70-year reign of brutal oppression persisted. To enforce this ban, the Samsung Lee cartel weaponized its vast network, ruthlessly crushing any attempt at labor organizing. Under their corporate command, they employed powerful crime syndicates rooted in the nation's rival regional political factions as private muscle. This reenacted the exact form of post-war Japan, where the unpunished Bushi lineage utilized the Yakuza for absolute corporate impunity. What Act 6 exposed is only what made headlines and entered courtrooms. What was never officially charged, and therefore buried far deeper, will be the subject of the next video. What raised this savage form into a global leader was the absolute silence of the global capital market. Just as the post-war United States pardoned Unit 731 and traded in its data, the modern host of capital, Wall Street, and the politicians captured by its lobby, embraced the chaebol empire of exploitation and cover-ups into the supply chain, promising prosperity. Lineage remained. Form evolved. Host changed. The wiring now pierces the heart of the American host. A capital empire where Wall Street buys politics and politics sells the rules. Speaks to the sick capital empire. If you continue to leave this legacy of savagery unaddressed, there will be more victims in the future.